Breaking their silence today, the family of a Massachusetts man kidnapped in Egypt. A group of Bedouins captured Pastor Michel Louis along with another American tourist and their Egyptian tour guide yesterday. It happened in the country's Sinai region. Louis' family says they are praying that everyone is freed. WCVB reports his son is concerned for his father's health because he is diabetic. Journalist Mohamed Fahmy joins me now by phone from the Sinai region. So, Mohamed, earlier you heard that the kidnappers were trying to negotiate by trying to win the release of some who were imprisoned on drug charges. What's the latest now on those negotiations?
Well, I just spoke to the head of security in Sinai, and he's very positive that the situation will be resolved shortly. I also spoke to the kidnappers a couple of hours ago, and they confirmed that the hostages are safe, they are unharmed, but they also vowed that they will kidnap more tourists if the authorities does not release their relative incarcerated. A dozen kidnaps in Sinai, and none of the hostages were harmed in any way. The last time U.S. hostages were taken in May, the authorities actually gave in to the kidnappers' demands and released the prisoner. Federica?
And so, Mohamed, in your discussions with those, kidnappers you spoke with, what was it about these alleged hostages? What made them vulnerable to these kidnappers?
Well, most of the kidnaps happened in the same area where the hostages were taken. We understand Pastor Michel Louis was on a missionary visit to Sinai, and that area is remote. There's not a lot of police patrolling there. And actually, the head of security in Sinai mentioned on the phone that the travel agency did not inform the police, so they were not able to send some sort of escort to secure the tourists. Federica?
And so, Mohamed, did these kidnappers say anything or reveal anything about their knowledge that this pastor, Louis in particular, was a diabetic and may need some medical help or treatment along the way?
They do not know that he's diabetic, or at least they did not show any signs that they knew about it. But he was very clear that he mentioned they are like my guests. We're giving them tea and rice, and that they are in good condition and that they will not be harmed. But he also mentioned that during Hillary Clinton's visit now, he thinks that maybe this will direct the spotlight to his situation, and he mentioned that he hopes she pressures the Egyptian authorities to release his uncle, who he claims is falsely detained on drug charges.
Journalist Mohamed Fahmy, thanks so much for that update. Keep us posted.
To Egypt now. Once again, a confusing situation there. There's a power struggle appearing to escalate between the new president and the parliament on one side and the military council and high court on the other. Sunday, the Egyptian president, Mohamed Morsi, called the dissolved parliament back. But on Monday, the Egyptian Supreme Court reaffirmed its decision to invalidate the parliamentary election, calling it final and binding. So what's going on? On the one hand, the president is saying to the parliament and parliamentarians, come back to the parliament building, and on the other, the high court is saying not so fast. Mohamed Fahmy joins us now by phone from Cairo, where extra riot police have been sent to surround the parliament's building. So have the members of parliament, Mohamed, returned to work in Cairo? What's the latest?
Well, tomorrow they're convening at 12:30 p.m. For the first session, but also the administrative court is seeing 25 cases brought against Morsi's decision, and they may actually overrule his presidential decision tomorrow, and that may actually take the situation to a political showdown. We know the Muslim Brotherhood is calling for a 1 million-man protest tomorrow in Tahrir Square in support of Morsi's decisions. And on the other hand, many legal experts I've spoken to are furious about his decision, calling it an insult to the judicial system in Egypt, and that he has no right to overrule the high court's decision. And that's where the debacle is right now, Hala.
So parliamentarians of this Islamist-led parliament elected in November are going to go back to work as a result of President Morsi's decision to reconvene this body?
Yes, and they have actually sent CNN a statement announcing that they will discuss one topic tomorrow, and that will be the court's decision on why they dissolved the parliament, and that's what they're going to be discussing tomorrow. Of course, there's extra security around the parliament in case the protests go out of hand, especially that the country is divided. There are many people who are angry at this decision, and there's another protest on the other side of town, which is a pro-SCAF protest, calling the Muslim Brotherhood to stop protesting. They're against Morsi. There's actually one case that has been brought to the administrative court calling for toppling the new president.
Let me quickly ask you this. What's the situation at the Parliament building now? Earlier, I read that there was a heavy military presence, but that the military left. What's the situation now? Are they going to prevent people from entering the building?
It's unclear if they will prevent people from entering the building, but the military indeed did leave from outside the parliamentary building, but there is presence of riot police there in case something goes out of hand. But in general, tomorrow is going to be a big day, possibly a confrontation, a political confrontation, let's say, if the administrative court actually overrules the High Court's decision. And many people say that will be an embarrassment to the new president, who is trying to prove that he has full powers over the military, and that he has taken his legislative powers, and that the parliament will convene as he decided.
Of course, this is now a situation of following again closely what happens in Egypt as this power struggle continues, it seems. Mohamed Fahmy is live in Cairo. Thanks very much. Staying in Egypt, dressed in white prison outfits behind a steel cage, the sons of ousted Egyptian leader Hosni Mubarak appeared Monday in a Cairo courtroom. They are facing new corruption charges. There you have one of his sons. Specifically, accusations of insider stock trading. Prosecutors say Mubarak's sons acquired millions of dollars using insider information about a bank sale, among other charges. A corruption trial against the two sons a month ago was dropped because the statute of limitations had expired on that specific.
But we have breaking news just coming into the Situation Room. We're learning now that Egyptian protesters by the thousands have stormed the Israeli embassy in Egypt. Let's go straight to our CNN producer, Mohamed Fahmy. He's joining us live from outside the embassy. Mohamed, tell our viewers what's going on, because obviously the Israeli-Egyptian relationship, there's been a peaceful relationship since 1979, is clearly at stake.
Well, Wolf, September 9th today started with a festive mood, and it was dubbed correcting the path of the revolution. Outside the Israeli embassy, protesters in the hundreds were able to hammer down the wall that was just built last week to secure the building of the Israeli embassy. Then, just a couple of meters away, clashes started between the protesters in the back street of the Israeli embassy. They clashed with the police, and Ministry of Health states that 88 people were injured during these clashes.
Mohammed, so there are reports now that these protesters got inside the Israeli embassy, have been ransacking it, and that Israeli documents have been seen floating around all the streets over there. Are any Israeli diplomats there? What's going on that front?
Well, I spoke to the army commander of the embassy, and he confirmed that there are no diplomats inside the embassy. But yes, the papers are everywhere, and people are carrying them. I got one of the papers and read it. It seems that what the army is saying is that protesters were able to enter through a balcony in the building from the floor under the Israeli embassy.
Did you say there was or was not a significant Egyptian police or military effort to try to secure, to try to keep the Israeli embassy safe?
Well, there is police and army standing alert, but there was no engaging with the protesters throughout the day. Only 7 hours ago in the back streets around the Israeli embassy, clashes started, and the protesters were able to, let's say, defeat the police. I've seen them confiscating machine guns, tear gas bombs, helmets, and running out, celebrating their so-called victory.
And we're showing our viewers, Mohammed, pictures from Egyptian State television. You can see the flames there. You can see what's going on. So what I hear you saying is that even though the tensions have been building now for the past couple of weeks as far as Egyptian-Israeli relations, there really was no major effort on the part of the Egyptian government, the new Egyptian post-Mubarak government, to protect the embassy there and protect those Israeli documents, those Israeli diplomats for all practical purposes. It looks like there could be a real rupture in the Israeli-Egyptian relationship after 30-plus years.
Well, Wolf, last couple of weeks ago, there was an incident on the Israeli-Egyptian border where 5 Egyptian soldiers were killed, and the investigations are ongoing. Some of the investigations were published. I believe the situation is tense. Today, the Israeli flag was removed off the Israeli embassy by the protesters for the second time, and they replaced it with the Egyptian flag.
Let's return to our top story, the football riots in Port Said, Egypt. Well, journalist Mohamed Fahmy joins us on the phone from Cairo. He's at a train station where fans of the Cairo team, as well as some of those injured in the violence, and even some bodies are returning from Port Said. Mohamed, what can you tell us?
Anna, I'm at the train station right now. There's several thousand Ahli fans who are waiting for the train that should be arriving any minute. There's several families here waiting for their sons who are attending the match in Port Said. Their sons have called them from the train, telling them about the injuries they sustained. Some of them have been stabbed. Some of them have been critically injured. I just got off the phone with the Ministry of Interior, and a general there was telling me that the police did not engage, but they tried to contain the situation. He's saying there were groups in the crowds who were provoking the police throughout the match, and just as the final whistle was blown, they stormed into the field, and 1 officer was killed, 14 were injured, including a general. The situation is very tense here. The Ahli fans are angry, they want revenge, and they're also chanting against the military. And it seems that tomorrow is going to be a very tense day in Cairo, especially that there's a march organized by the Ahli fans to the Ministry of Interior. Anna?
Mohamed, do we know why police didn't intervene?
Well, there has been a lot of violence lately, as you know, in Cairo, and the police has been engaging in many of these protests. According to the ministry, they tried to contain the situation, but this got out of hand, and they did not want to be involved in any sort of violence that may have been escalated to a situation that they could not even predict. And basically what's happening right now is that the train is almost arriving. I can actually see a train coming in, and the fans are getting a bit excited right now. Not sure if it's the right train, but basically what's happening is that the Ahli fans are very, very angry. Anna?
And Mohamed, we're getting reports as well that that bodies are being brought back. Have you witnessed this?
I did not witness this, but I spoke to an officer at an airport in Cairo where 2 military planes have arrived carrying the Ahli soccer players and the bodies that have been brought in from Port Said, and some of the critically injured that have been admitted to hospitals in Cairo. We know there's 73 people who have died, 150 or even 180 who are critically injured, and the situation is still unfolding here in Cairo. Anna?
Mohamed, do we know how these people died? I mean, were they trampled? Were they shot? Were they stabbed?
Well, I spoke to the Ministry of Health and also to the head of the Ahli Fans Committee. Some of these people fell from the bleachers. Some were suffocated during the crowds and the attacks. A lot of people have sustained head concussions. Some people were stabbed. There was definitely, by the Ministry of Health, a report saying that they were deep cuts caused by sharp objects. And the situation basically is still unfolding. There's an investigation ongoing by the police and the prosecutor's office, and we'll be giving more information on that. Anna?
Certainly, such a disturbing event. Mohamed Fahmy bringing us the latest of those riots in Egypt. Thank you so much.
Journalist Mohamed Fahmy joins us on the line from Tahrir Square near the US Embassy. Can you explain to us and describe to us what the scene is there at Tahrir Square this hour, just after 7 in the morning?
the riot police has been battling around 500 protesters for the past 7 hours straight. It was extremely an intense fight with tear gas fired and Molotov cocktails hailed at the police by the protesters. I witnessed a protester that was hit by a canister in his head, and he was bleeding, and he was taken to an ambulance. At the moment, I am looking at a police truck that is engulfed in flames after it was ambushed by the protesters. The officer fled, but the situation is extremely intense in Tahrir Square right now. The police has been able to push the protesters away from the embassy around 200 meters into Tahrir Square, and at the moment the situation looks very intense and more people are joining in. At the moment people are going to work. It's 7 a.m. They're shocked to see the situation in Tahrir Square. There's a lot of smoke. The protesters are burning tires to weaken the effect of the tear gas in the air. Rosemary?
Mohamed, can you explain to us whether there's been any explanation at all as to how those protesters got inside the U.S. Embassy compound yesterday, and if authorities there can ensure that that won't happen again?
Well, I spoke to a spokesman from the Interior Ministry, and he explained to me that the riot police was overwhelmed at the amount of protesters that showed up outside the embassy, and they simply could not contain them. I was there when it happened, and the protesters jumped over the fence and entered the garden of the embassy. They did not actually enter the building. They removed the American flag and they replaced it with the jihad flag associated with jihad in Islam. The crowd today is completely different from the crowd that was present outside the embassy. There are no Islamists in the crowd today. The protesters today are mostly young men who are battling it out with the police as we speak. And just right now, I'm seeing more Molotov cocktails hailed at the police, and they are responding with tear gas.
And Mohamed, have you had a chance to talk to some of these protesters? Are they there because of that controversial anti-Islam movie that initially seemed to spark this trouble?
Most definitely. I've been speaking to protesters throughout the night, and many of them have actually seen the film, and they are furious at the scenes portraying Prophet Muhammad alluding to sexual topics and other scenes that they are extremely angry about. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about who actually produced the film, and the Muslim Brotherhood has called for a massive protest, nationwide protest on Friday after prayers, and this situation seems to be escalating as we speak, Rosemary.
All right, Mohamed Fahmy talking to us there on the line from Tahrir Square. Thanks so much for that. As you heard, Mohamed...
Political discontent is bringing protesters out to Egypt's iconic Tahrir Square again today. Supporters and opponents of Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi clashed in the square. They threw rocks at each other. The health ministry says at least 12 people were injured. We can go live now to journalist Mohamed Fahmy on the phone from Cairo. What's the situation in Tahrir right now, Mohamed?
Well, thousands of protesters went to Tahrir Square today for a protest dubbed accountability. They want the government to be accountable for the killing of the protesters. Not a single police officer has been convicted for the killing of the protesters. And also yesterday, the court acquitted 24 senior members of Mubarak's former regime who were implicated in the Battle of the Camel that happened last year in February. What happened is basically the Muslim Brotherhood followers destroyed a stage that was being built by some right-wing groups, and this is when the clashes started. Rock throwing, Molotov cocktails were thrown back and forth. The Ministry of Health just updated their numbers. There's at least 60 people who have been injured due to the rocks, and the situation at the moment seems to have simmered down a little bit, but it still remains tense in Tahrir Square.
I understand we have some new video. This is live or not, Sarah? Not live, but just moments ago, giving us a bird's eye view there of Tahrir Square. And if I can see correctly, it looks as though the crowds have thinned, Mohamed, but there's still people out there. I imagine there are fears that it might turn violent again.
Yes, definitely. The pockets of protesters have been dispersed. It has calmed down a little bit, but there is a chance of more violence, especially that in the side streets of Tahrir Square, which you don't see on camera right now, there are still some street battles ongoing, and there's also 2 buses that have been burned close to the museum, and they say that they belong to the Muslim Brotherhood supporters who have been bussed in from other areas in Egypt to Cairo for that protest.
And are there security forces on the ground there keeping the sides apart? What's the situation on that front?
There is no sign of any security forces, and I think that is well planned, because usually what happens is the protesters turn on the police, and like you've seen in many times, it turns into days and days of violence. So right now it's just some wise scholars who are trying to calm the situation, some religious people, personalities that are trying to calm the situation, but we're keeping an eye on the Tahrir Square as the story develops.
Thank you. Mohamed Fahmy is live in Cairo.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Got some breaking news here. Americans who were held hostage in Egypt have now been released. Pastor Michelle Lewis from Boston and Lisa Alphonse, they were traveling through Egypt on a missionary trip to Israel. They were abducted on Friday when the tour bus was stopped in the Sinai Peninsula. Mohamed Fahmy, he's joining us on the phone from Cairo. I understand that you actually had a chance to talk to them. Is that right?
I just spoke to Michel Luis, and he is extremely happy. He said, all I can say is thank God and to our governors for securing our release. We are heading directly to Israel to join the members of our church as soon as we get our passports sent to us from Cairo. I tell my family I'm in good health and in good spirits, but I have not taken my medicine since Friday, so I'm a little tired. Lisa also was extremely happy. She said they've been treated really well. I've spoken to the authorities, and they are now in police custody along with their Egyptian interpreter. They are in good spirits. They're waiting to get their passports, and it seems that the situation has been resolved.
And how was it resolved, Mohamed? How do we know?
The authorities did not give in to the demand of the kidnapper.
So do you know how this was resolved? How did they escape?
It happened really quickly. I was on the phone with the intelligence, and they were telling me that they're not reaching any sort of solution. And then the police headquarters called me up and said, hey, they're here, they're in our bureau. So it's actually not clear what exactly happened for this breakthrough, but everybody's happy that this has been resolved. And we will be following up with more information, and we will be getting some more photos of them in the police station.
Mohamed, who was actually holding them hostage? And what did they want?
The kidnapper was known as Gurmi Abu Musa. He's a well-known criminal in Sinai. He wanted his uncle released from an Alexandria prison who he claims has been detained on false drug charges. The kidnapper is not known now where he has gone, but he has not been apprehended so far.
And Mohamed, you say that that they are in good spirits, in good condition, because we do know that the pastor is a diabetic.
Yes, he also added that he did not receive his medicine since he was abducted, and he's a little tired, but he is happy and he wants to join the rest of his 22 members of the church that continued their trip to Israel. They were in Sinai on a missionary trip, and they were heading to Israel when he was abducted and picked up off the bus. He's in good spirit, and at the moment they will be escorted by the U.S. Embassy personnel who are on their way to Sinai to receive them.
All right, Mohamed, thank you very much. When you have more detail, we'll get back to you.